Everyone, this is Zach back here with another episode of Clutch Crew Sports. And here on today's episode, we are returning to Around the Hoop, talking about some basketball. Football's been dead for the past few weeks. And so we just figured let's talk about some basketball. We haven't, spent that much time on this season. So we're going to talk about the James Harden and Ben Simmons trade, as well as picking some teams we think are most likely to win the NBA championship. Now let me introduce you to the rest of the crew.
Yo, what's going on, guys? It's Eric, the ranting co-host here.
All right. So this Eric, for our basketball teams, I think this is partly why I haven't been watching much basketball this year. Is just our teams are in the cellar, man.
Oh,
Eric's,
yeah, dude.
Eric's a Thunder fan. I'm a Magic and Trailblazers fan, and at least I had the Trailblazers for all these years. They were a consistent playoff team. Damian Lillard would have 50-point nights that are exciting to watch. Even a couple of years ago, the Magic were like a fringe playoff team, but now it's just rebuild, rebuild, rebuild. So I'm feeling what Eric's felt the past few years. This is how rebuilding.
Yeah, dude. You know what this is like. Do we want to do an over/under like before the next draft on how many more draft picks the Thunder GM will acquire?
Just draft picks.
I'll set it at 3.5.
I'll go over on that one. The Thunder's GM is just crazy with these trades.
He is. I'm gonna say under though, just only because of how many we already have. It's like how many more can we even get, dude? But I will say though, if it is the over, I won't be surprised.
All right. So yeah, there was a block. I mean, the NBA trade deadline was actually pretty active this year. There were some actual trades that happened. I know a lot of years it's like, oh, trade deadline. It's usually more hype than it actually is results. But this time around, there was a major trade that definitely got all of the league's attention, and that was the James Harden to Philadelphia for Ben Simmons, I think Andre Drummond and Seth Curry and some draft picks. So this was the biggest trade of them all, and it's of course solving two teams to have different headaches on their team that they're just shipping out for each other. So Eric, I just want to kind of get your overall opinion of the trade for both sides. Who do you think won or lost? I mean, it's possible both teams won or both teams lost with this, but who do you like in this trade?
Yeah, I remember we ran a poll on Twitter shortly after the trade had happened, and I think majority of the people said that the Nets won the trade. But for me, I like the trade better for the 76ers. I think for James Harden, he can go into Philly and play more of his style of basketball. Like, he likes to be that point guard that slashes and facilitates and does things like that. Whereas, in Brooklyn, like for their whole first season, with Kyrie, he played as more of a like off-ball guard and things like that. He didn't get to play his style as much. And I will say too, before I go any farther, I'm not saying I am a fan of his style of play. I just want to make sure that that's on the record. But I'm not the biggest James Harden fan. But in terms of more comfortability and for his style of play, I really think he's going to do better in Philly. A lot of people think he's not going to be a great fit with Embiid. I've seen that too, but I disagree with that. I think he's a much better fit than Ben Simmons. And a lot of people I saw that say the Nets won the trade, they say, oh, well, they got shooting and they got a big man and they got all this stuff. But let's be real here. I mean, Andre Drummond has been playing as a backup center for most teams the last few years. Like, really ever since he left Detroit, he's mainly been more of just a reserve role player. He's just going to be a guy that comes in off the bench some. He might start for Brooklyn some just because they don't have the greatest big man situation right now. But even when he was on the Lakers, when they didn't have the greatest competition at center, he was still coming off the bench most of the time. So I'm not really a fan of him. And then Seth Curry's a good shooter. He was the piece that I liked the most for the Nets to get, actually. And then Ben Simmons, I don't know. I still just feel like he's one of the most overrated players ever. Like, people always hype him up as this amazing player, but the guy literally cannot shoot a jump shot that's like past mid range. Like, he will not shoot 3-pointers. Like, yes, he's a good passer. Yes, he can play some good defense for you and stuff. But to me, when it comes to, really truly helping impact the score of the game, he doesn't make that much of a difference to me. I don't know. I do feel like the Nets needed to get rid of James Harden just because it seemed like he wasn't fitting well with them. But I really didn't think they got that great of a deal in the return. Like, I would have rather, if I were a Nets fan, instead of getting like Drummond and Curry, well, maybe Curry because he's a good shooter, but instead of Drummond, I would have rather than been able to get another young guy like Maxey or Tybal or something like that in return. I know, and I guess other people are talking too about the first round picks, but I mean, the first round pick this year is probably going to be a very late first round pick, most likely. It's probably even going to be, it's probably going to be pretty close to the second round. So I don't really think that's as big of a deal. A first round pick like that is nowhere near as valuable. Even a late first round pick in the NFL is still pretty valuable, but a late first round pick in the NBA isn't really worth anything. And then I think the other pick was for like 2025 or 2026 or something. I mean, that's still 4 years down the road before they're even going to get whatever that is. So that wouldn't bother me as a 76ers fan either. I think James Harden's by far the best player in the trade, and that's who Philly's getting. So I give it to them. But Zach, I remember before, like when we did the poll, I want to say, I don't remember correctly because this was a while ago, but I think you said that the Nets won the trade. So is that true, or do you still feel that way?
Yeah, I still feel that way, a little bit different than you on this. This to me is very, very close. I think it's a win for both teams, but a little bit more for the Nets. And I don't think necessarily that this is going to be a win for them this season. I think this is more of a long-term play because we don't know how Ben Simmons is going to be, especially this season where he hasn't played at all. I mean, the expectations I think for him are pretty low. But the key for the Nets, I think, is next season. Um, Durant and Kyrie will still be there. And I think next season with Simmons in the lineup gets, used to playing with these guys. And you have, the other players on the Nets as well. But I really think the Nets are looking ahead the season. And then also, too, with that draft pick, I don't necessarily think even that draft pick will be utilized. It's, teams at this stage, on the contending scale tend to trade their draft picks no matter what. I mean, it's like a crime if you take a rookie.
So are you saying they're going to package it to the Thunder for
there you go
or something?
Yeah, here's what's going to happen. That draft pick will go to the Thunder. The Thunder are going to pick up some pretty decent but older player who's got a big cap number. The Thunder are going to take on a large portion of that cap hit. This is a guy on another team. Another team's going to be like, oh no, we got to free some cap space. Send him to OKC. OKC gets a draft pick from them to take on that contract.
That sounds about right. I definitely don't disagree with that at all.
Yeah, and then eventually that first round pick will go to OKC, and they'll get some older player that's declining, still a big cap number. So, but obviously that'll be next year since the trade deadline's happened now. That's just what I think will happen with that pick.
Yeah.
The 2026 thing, that's way too far in the future to grade. But And then as far as James Harden, it like clearly wasn't working. This is why I think it's a win for both teams, though, is they at least get somebody playing now. Harden, he's going to be playing for the Sixers, instantly, fills a void from a player who wasn't playing for them. And then with the Nets getting Harden out of there, it just, the way things were with him and Kyrie and Durant, like it just, the chemistry was not there. It was not working. So I'll also credit both teams. Neither team traded for Russell Westbrook too, so that's
that was smart. I remember seeing all those rumors like the Lakers are gonna trade Westbrook in there. I'm like, what team in their right mind would acquire a guy who's being paid $45 million, who's clearly regressing? Yeah, okay, but yeah, some teams just gonna mortgage their future for that guy. Like, okay,
yeah,
it makes sense.
Yeah, so that's how I feel about the trade. I think the Nets slightly won it, but it's going to be interesting to see how Harden works with Embiid. I still think the biggest problem for the Sixers, and in my opinion, I don't think this solves it, is shooting. I mean, that's always been their problem with Embiid. They need 3-point shooters, and they gave up Seth Curry, who, he can be inconsistent, but when he's hot, I mean, he can light up a quarter.
Yeah, I'd say they probably broke even on that, because I mean James Harden is a pretty good shooter too. So he loves those step back threes and all that. So I'd say they broke even, but at the same time, since they acquired James Harden, but since they lost Seth Curry, it's like, well, you didn't really get anywhere, and neither of those guys are exactly like great at defense either. So it's like basically it's almost like the same, except James Harden can also slash and do better. He's a better passer and stuff. Like he can definitely do way more offensively for you, but defensively they're still the same. And overall they're like shooting is still the same. But we're gonna see, like, the 76ers have played 2 games now since Harden came back from the injury and everything, and he's been doing pretty good. He, like, that style I talked about of getting to like be ball dominant, and if he wants to go for the shot, go for the shot, or if he wants to do the kick out, do the kick out. Like doing that, like it's clearly all like.
You agree?
Granted, they played the Timberwolves and the Knicks, so it's not like they beat the like Warriors and Suns or something, but they did dominate those. So it seems like his style is already benefiting from this. So
my thing is, though, like, this is still Embiid's team. Like, this is my worry, is like, kind of what you said, other people were talking about Embiid. Like, I still feel like this is Embiid's team, and I think as ball dominant as Harden can be, I don't know if that's going to frustrate Embiid at all. That's my biggest worry with the fit with him and Embiid.
Yeah, maybe, but I also think that having James Harden can draw, maybe, I mean, obviously Embiid's playing at like an MVP level this year, so obviously he's still, a huge factor for the team, but having Harden, can, I think, will scare defenses a little more than, say, like Seth Curry or, Ben Simmons. Because especially the problem with, like, when Ben Simmons was playing, Ben Simmons is dribbling the ball up at the 3-point line. Nobody's scared he's going to take the shot, so the defender's more backed off and could be in the way of possibly like intercepting a pass to Embiid, or just different factors like that. Whereas with Harden at the 3-point line, you have to give him more respect, and that could give Embiid more opportunities to not be double teamed as often or different things like that. I just think it's a better fit, and like Embiid was hella frustrated with Ben Simmons, like in that playoff run last year and things like that. Like it was so obvious. Like you could just tell that he was done with him. So just the fact that he has another superstar that wants to be there, even though like James Harden has been kind of frustrating too, with like, oh, I don't want to be on this team, or I'm tired of being on this team or whatever. But he loves Daryl Morey for whatever reason, and so I think James Harden really truly does want to be there. So I think Embiid is going to welcome that more. Like, okay, we got somebody that wants to be here, wants to win. He's not going to be timid with the ball. I think it's going to be better. So, but like you said, these guys obviously though have huge egos. So there is still a possibility that could happen, like what you were talking about.
Yeah. All right, let's get started now on our draft of teams that we think are most likely to win the NBA Finals. So this is like, how we feel right now. We're not factoring in our preseason predictions or any of that stuff. This is right now with what we know and how these teams are. We are going to do 4 rounds of draft. Eric, I'll go ahead and give you the first pick.
Oh, such a kind gentleman, sir. I was wondering, I was like, is Zach's either going to be really nice and give me the first pick, or he's going to be like, well, I'm the host, so I get the first pick. So I wasn't sure what you were going to do.
Yeah. You got the first.
Yeah, sorry.
Oh, I was just saying you got the first, and with the first pick, Eric selects. Drum roll.
The ranting co-hosts select the Golden State Warriors with the first pick in the contender draft. I'm choosing them just because this team is just insane to watch. And I know, like, as of right now, they're not, number one in the West, but, in their games against the Suns, they've had pretty intense games, and they have been able to beat them, even though the Suns have the best record. And I just feel like they're the team to beat right now. So I am happy to obtain them with the number 1 selection.
I wish I hadn't given you the number 1 pick, because that's yeah, I've got my list already made up here. So I'm one of those GMs that says stick to the board. That's what I'm going to do.
Stick to the board.
Yeah, let the draft fall to me. But yeah, I wanted the Warriors, just like everything you said. Curry and Clay being back too is big, because like the Warriors, we knew were a good team even without Clay. They were a playoff team, but adding him back, I mean, it's clear what they've been missing the past 2 years.
And even like Andrew Wiggins has been really good this year. I mean, he even like made the All-Star lineup as a starter. And obviously like he's another guy I don't like, but I mean, you still got Draymond Green there. Like, while he's not scoring anything for you, like, he's playing good defense. He's facilitating on offense. Like this Warriors team is pretty deadly right now.
Yeah, for sure, man. All right, well, I'm going to have to go with my number 2 selection here and take the Milwaukee Bucks. This was the team that I picked in the preseason to win. I know I said that has no bearing on this, but just a little nugget there. Nuggets might come up later in the draft. Who knows? The puns are rolling off today, man.
They are.
But yeah, I really like this Bucks team. I think the standings and the thing with these championship teams is once you win a title, I think in any sport, maybe except for the NFL, because the NFL, every game means so much. But these teams that go on long playoff runs, win titles, for several seasons or whatever, they realize the regular season is really just a grind. It's especially in the month of like February and March, like this is just gearing up for the playoffs. It's pretty much just practicing for the playoffs. They're not trying to set any records or anything like that. They're not trying to break the win record or anything. So the Bucks standings wise might not be looking the best, but they did win the title last year. They brought back a lot of that team. Giannis still playing terrific, so I like them.
It's almost like the Bucks are just like coasting right now, someone was doing this draft and they were like, oh, I'm going based off the standings and I'm not picking the Bucks, but it almost just feels like to me like they're just coasting.
Yeah, I mean the Bucks. I mean they're kind of like the Bucks in football too.
I will say as long one of the main things for them. I mean, obviously like Giannis playing at a high level, that's a dub. But like, the only time where the Bucks concerned me like so far this season is when they had that stretch of games when Middleton was out. They definitely did not play as well when he wasn't in there, and so if he were to like, I mean, obviously, if any team loses a big player like by the playoffs, like that's going to be severely damaging to their chances. But I feel like if Middleton were to for some reason be out, it would be a bigger problem than most people would think it is, if that makes sense.
No, I agree. They're not going to win it without him. If he's not healthy or he's something out of his own playoffs, like I give him no chance without a guy like Middleton.
Gotcha. So, yeah.
All right, let's hear the second pick from the ranting co-host, Eric.
The ranting co-host. I'll do it like LeBron did in the All-Star draft. So with the second pick of the first round of this draft, the ranting co-host will select the Phoenix Suns. I had them at number 3 on my list on my board. The Bucks were number 2, so Zach did snipe me on that one. But the Suns would have been number 2 on my list, though, if it weren't for the Chris Paul injury. I do worry about that for a while, but from my understanding, what I've heard, he should be good come playoff time, I believe. So as long as he's back by the playoffs, then the Phoenix Suns have a real chance. I mean, you can tell, I was a little worried about them coming into the season. I felt like their playoff run, even though they made it to the finals and looked for a while there like they were going to win the finals, I still was worried that it was a bit of a fluke, though, just because of all of the, injury-riddled teams that they beat to get there and everything. But you can tell just like the way they're playing this season, they are on a mission. This is not I think a lot of people might have thought that this team was going to be like the 2020 Miami Heat team, like how they were in 2021, like after the COVID bubble run and everything. And they made it to the finals and all that. And then really just weren't quite the same team the next year. But the Suns have not been like that at all. Like, they're definitely a contender for sure. And the ranting co-host is very happy to have them on my list of teams.
Very nice. It's crazy, man, because the Suns were my third pick as well. So far our boards have been identical. I wonder if that'll continue.
I will say, I don't know about you, with your process, but I don't know if you mentioned in the beginning, but we're doing 4 rounds total, so there will be 8 teams selected. When I made my 8 teams, those 3, the Warriors, Suns, and Bucks, I mean, I had them in the first minute, and then it was from number 4 on where I really had to think about what's my order going to be here. This is where I just came up with it. So this is where I feel like it's going to start to get different, but we'll see. I'm definitely going to be curious as to who you're going to pick here.
Yeah,
who the creators will select.
The creators. So yeah, and I agree with you on that. It was, for me, it was Bucks and Warriors were easily 1-2. The Suns kind of ended up at 3, and then there was a big gap after that with everybody else. So with the number 4 pick, I'm going to take the Miami Heat. I think this is the second. So I've taken 2 East teams. Eric has taken 2 West teams, but I mean, you know how it is every year in the NBA. It's the West is always going to be the tougher conference to get out of. The East, you usually can get by in the first round with an easy opponent. Second round, an average opponent, and then you've got to win 1 series to get to the NBA Finals. And then once you're in the NBA Finals, it's best of 7 series with whoever comes out the West. So the Heat look like they have a track to home court advantage in the East, at least, being a top 1, 2, or 3 seed. I just like this team just finds ways to win. I really like their defense. That's the biggest improvement, in my opinion, from the team last year to this year. Kyle Lowry's actually, I make fun of him, but it seems like when I do, he does good. I'm just a fan of this Heat team. They keep winning. They're not a sexy pick, but I think they're a sleeper that a lot of people don't realize that, the Heat are pretty good.
Yeah,
Is that who you?
I do have the I do have the Heat. I did have the Heat on my list, not quite as high up as you, but my only concern for them is it seems like a lot of times there's that one team that like overachieves in the regular season and manages to get like the 1 or the 2 seed, and then they kind of fizzle out come playoff time, and I have that worry about the Heat. But at the same time, like you said, like, they're having a great season. They're finding ways to win games, even when it looks like games that they shouldn't win, they still find a way to win. So that's why I still did have them on my list. So I definitely can see it, and I definitely don't fault the pick for sure.
All right, let's hear the third round pick now for the ranting co-host.
With the third round pick of the 2022 NBA potential playoffs championship contending teams, the ranting co-hosts will take the Philadelphia 76ers. So this one for me was really tough to make. This was my fourth highest pick. I just like I talked about earlier with the James Harden trade, like I'm a fan of it and I think it's a good fit or that he is a good fit for them. My concern with the pick is just that James Harden has tended to disappear in the playoffs, regardless of whatever team he's been on. So I have that concern going forward. But at the same time, like you talked about with the Nets trade or the Nets end of the trade, that it was kind of more of an idea of looking towards the future. I think with the 76ers acquiring James Harden, this was, we want to win right now. And I think the 76ers are going all in. Embiid's playing at an MVP level. Harden's already looked pretty good in his, first 2 games. I do think the 76ers are a threat to win it. So I'm curious to see, Zach, what you thought about this pick, though.
What was that? I couldn't quite hear what you
I
just said.
said I'm curious to see what you think about this pick.
Oh yeah, so actually for me, the way the board ended up, and the math I was doing to pick these teams out, they did not crack my top 8. Actually, Philly did not crack my top 8, and the main reason is just playoff Harden. I mean, what more can I say? Playoff Harden. I didn't think the 76ers. I thought they were a good team. Obviously, they still are. But when it comes to the playoffs, it's just, I mean, we see it time and time again. Crucial games he disappears in. So
he does. But I will say, and I know that the 76ers kind of have this history as well, but I put a lot more of that on Ben Simmons than I do on the other guys. I watched, a lot of that 76ers Hawks series last year where they got eliminated, and if Ben Simmons doesn't disappear, the Hawks easily win that, and then they go on and face the Bucks. I think Embiid is just playing at another level, and he did play well in the playoffs last year. Tobias Harris had some solid games. So my hope with this pick is that it's more so that, if James Harden doesn't play well, then he has these other guys that, can rely on and maybe carry him a little better. And I know some people might say, well, he was on the Nets last year, but I mean, Kyrie got hurt and obviously KD was playing beast, but James Harden had come off of an injury himself last year, that hamstring injury and everything when he came back for the playoffs. So even though he did play poorly, obviously, I'm definitely not going to deny that, but I do know at the same time he wasn't 100%. So, but he does need to step it up though. Because this was definitely my riskiest pick, I think, where I was like, oh, this is a big risk making this pick. But I've given James Harden a lot of confidence. This is one of the first times I've ever been confident in him in his career is being with the 76ers here. So there could be a rant, coming forward if he pulls a Kawhi and Paul George, with my Clippers picks a couple of seasons ago. So, James Harden, you're on notice.
gonna pre-order a Harden jersey from NBAstore.com here.
Oh no, I definitely trust me. I still don't like him. This is where I think he's actually going to be good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Trust me.
All right.
I'm not buying a James Harden jersey.
All right. So with my third round pick now here, I'm getting the team next on my board that I wanted to get, and that would be the Chicago Bulls. The Bulls, they did something this year that usually doesn't work out for teams. At least, I guess I'm thinking NFL wise. Like my brain's always thinking NFL. You're trained like you have to draft well, don't spend in free agency, that sort of stuff. The Bulls kind of are taking the approach of like the Rams in the NFL. Making big trades and big free agent signings in the offseason. And this team not only is playing well and it's showing up in the stat sheet, but just the depth on this team is unreal. I mean, you've got DeRozan, who's a legit MVP candidate, who they signed in free agency. I mean, it's crazy to think how I saw a thing that the Lakers were close to signing DeRozan, but they didn't because they only wanted a 2-year contract instead of a 3-year contract that DeRozan wanted or something like that. They wouldn't give him an extra year that he wanted. And that was what prevented the Lakers from getting DeRozan. But
Dang, and then they got Russell Westbrook instead.
Yeah, and then instead.
God, dude.
Yeah, I know how that could have been different. But DeRozan, I mean, so good, especially, the run he's been on recently is historic, obviously. He's the story of the NBA. And then you add in just the existing Bulls that were here, like Levine, and some of their younger guys, role players that are coming in, but trades and free agency stuff like Vucevic, Lonzo Ball, Tristan Thompson. I know Caruso's hurt right now, but he might come back. Everything it's like the Bulls can't do anything wrong with everybody they brings in, even a guy like Tristan Thompson, I think is going to do wonders for him. I just think the Bulls are built different than these other teams are. They totally came out of nowhere this year. But I'm a big fan of a lot of the players on this team, so I think they have a real good shot to go far. What about you, Eric? What do you think?
Yeah, they were next on my board. I had them higher than the Heat just because I feel like because they're like the Heat and the Bulls are like the top two in the East right now standings wise, but I had the Bulls over the Heat just because I feel like a lot of people might be sleeping on both of them, on both of these teams, but I think the Bulls are better than the Heat, and I really do like their team as well. Like, it's like you said, their depth is really good. The Bulls would be my like surprise like team that could come out of the East. Like, I know most people would probably think Bucks, like, when KD and Simmons come back, like people might think the Nets, and some people want to be high on like the 76ers, kind of like how I am. But I think people are sleeping on the Bulls and the Heat. But I like if there's but if between the Bulls and the Heat, one that could really be a surprise, like, man, this team really could actually do it, I think it's the Bulls. So
Yeah.
that was a great pick there. I do like that pick.
Glad I have it. And so far, I've got 3 teams from the East. So, once the season's over and we look back at this draft, I'm going to be following the East very closely.
Yeah, I think I can see that. I can see that.
All right. So the last round now, Eric, take a look at your new board now that the Bulls are off of it, and tell us who you got here with your last pick.
I've got 2 teams here that are left on my board, and it's tough to go with because I've got one team that seems like a up and coming team, and then I've got another team that's like riddled with injuries right now, but we know they have talent like when they're all healthy. So it's a matter of which one do I want to go with, but screw it. I'm going to go with the young and up and coming team that I think would be more surprising, but I'm going to go with the Memphis Grizzlies. this, if we were doing the episode like kind of how we do the format before with like most surprising and most disappointing and stuff like that, like the Grizzlies for sure just have to be up there as the most surprising team. I mean, this is a team that snuck into the playoffs last year with the or with that tournament and everything, and
Yeah,
knocked the Warriors out, which was a big surprise. But I don't know, man. I mean, John Morant is just a straight up beast. I mean, and they're kind of like how like Zach talked about with the Heat. Like this is another team that's just like finding ways to win games where you think like there's no way they're going to win, but they do. And I mean, a lot of guys on this team, like people wouldn't even recognize, but Jaren Jackson's another young guy that is playing, well at times for them. And even I got to give a shout out, to my old Thunder buddy here, Steven Adams, the Aquaman look-alike. Like, obviously he's not, a big offensive threat or anything, but he's that big guy in the paint that can rim protect. If a rebound gets in his way, he's going to snag it. Like this Grizzlies team is just electrifying and a lot of fun to watch. And I don't know. I mean, obviously I picked them fourth on my list, so they're not the team that I have the most confidence in per se, but they're an exciting team to watch. So I'm glad by having them on my team. Like I'm, kind of like Zach talked about with following the East. Like I have 3 teams in the West now, so I'm definitely going to be following the West. But the Grizzlies are just an exciting team, and they're a team I think most people would root for, like beside like whoever their favorite team is. Like so, I hopefully I don't regret not picking the other team on my board, but at the same time, I'm excited to have the Grizzlies. So, Zach, what's your thoughts here?
Yeah, so you said screw it on taking the Grizzlies. Did your board say the other team and you changed your mind last minute?
Well, I had the Grizzlies one higher than the other team, so like the Grizzlies
so you did
were, but at the same time, like logically in my mind, I guess the other team I was thinking would make more sense. But then I was like,
yeah.
no, I'm gonna go. I was like, screw it. I'm gonna go with the higher one on my board, the one that I'm more excited about. I'm doing it. It was tough though.
Yeah, no, this is the fun part about this draft. It's like, making these decisions. And comparatively, like the Grizzlies didn't reach my top 8, just because I feel like they're too young. That's my thing with the Grizzlies. Maybe they're like the Hawks of last year.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do. That is the thing I do worry about. Like how I mentioned earlier, there's always that team that seems like they overachieve in the regular season, but I don't know, man. Since like Zach talked about in the beginning of this, like all the teams that we like between Zach and I, like are nowhere near the playoffs. Well, I guess the Trailblazers are technically close, but they're not going to contend most likely. And then the Thunder and Magic, we suck. So, the Grizzlies are a team where like when the playoffs start, I'm gonna. So my voice is going out. They're a team when the playoffs start, like if I'm available to like watch their games live when they play, like I'll be watching them for sure. I'm excited about them.
Cool. Yeah, they're going to be a fun team to watch. See what happens this year. So I'm going to go ahead and make my fourth and final pick. I'm going to pick the team I'm guessing Eric was torn over. That's the Brooklyn Nets. Or next on the board.
That was it.
So I mean, some people would say this is a steal. You're getting the 8 here. You're getting the Nets. This is more banking on the star power than it is, how the teams are playing right now. This is, if the games were to start right now, I wouldn't pick the Nets, but assuming health is okay, which is a big assumption with this team, but it's definitely healthy. You've got KD, you've got Kyrie, you bring in Seth Curry. We don't even know what Ben Simmons is going to be, but if anything, he could just be a defensive only player for this team. They've got shooters and they've got scoring elsewhere on this team. This isn't like the 76ers where you just have basically Embiid and some other, good young guys around him. Like this is a veteran team. So I really like this Nets team. The key is going to be the health for these guys, but if they are healthy, I mean, this is a team that we all on paper were like, the Nets are extremely talented. Another big thing too that in the recent days or whatever that's bumped them up, in my opinion, is it seems like the vaccination status for New Yorkers is going to be going away soon. So there's a possibility that Kyrie's going to be able to play in home games, which is a pretty big deal to play in home games. So he's not going to be limited to road games anymore. So if he's with the team full time, that's a big improvement. That's like getting a player back who was injured half the playoff series. So
I wish I had researched the vaccination status thing. If I had known that, I might have just gone with the Nets, but I had not heard that.
Yeah. So yeah, all these things. I think the Nets, they're preseason, top 2 pick to win the title. So their key will obviously be these other East teams. They got to take down Giannis. I think that's going to be critical for them, though. They got to beat the Bucks. Sorry, to get to the finals. But if they can, it'll be interesting to see how they do. A Warriors Nets finals would be high drama. I'll just say that ends up being
that would be exciting to watch. They did beat the Bucks the other day or yesterday, I see, which is it was a road game, so they had Kyrie for that one, but
never seen a team want to play on the road, right?
yeah, you're like, I want our team to have the road games. Okay, so I'm just curious then, I guess I'll just ask you this real quick. So if I had taken the Nets and you weren't able to get them, who would you have picked instead?
All right, so I'll reveal the rest of my list here. So I had for my number 7 as the Nuggets, and then my number 8 was the Jazz. Those were my backup plans if you had taken the Nets.
Okay, got you. Yeah, and all 8 of my picks on the board are in the draft, so I don't have any teams left. So good thing I made a full 8.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, well, that's going to wrap this episode up, guys. Thanks for listening and watching to it. Hopefully you enjoyed our little talk on how these teams are doing and also the blockbuster NBA trade. So hopefully you guys enjoyed. Until next time, be clutch.
Peace.